Hey, everybody. Happy Tuesday. It's week 49. Can you believe it? I already started working on my notes for week 50, and I'm like, 50? We are almost there. So this week we had a bunch of great stuff to read. I'm super excited to talk about this. Isn't everything just like really coming together in the whole God's whole design and all of the people and all of the things? So we read Zachariah 11 through 14, Ezra chapters 5 and 6, the entire book of Esther, 1st Peter and 2nd Peter, and then we had Psalm 136 through 138, and then Psalm 20 or Proverbs 27. I think one of the hard parts about doing this is the Proverbs, man, they're so deep, so I can't just I always feel like in order to do it justice, I have to go line by line, and so for that reason, I haven't attacked any of the books of Proverbs. Maybe I'll do that. Or any of the chapters of Proverbs because it it's just it would take the entire time because it's like just every line is significant. But anyway, I hope you're getting something out of him. We have just a couple more to go. So we are going to start out with the Old Testament as always. Today we started reading we're continuing our read through the book of Zachariah, who is one of the minor prophets. He was prophesying at the same time that people were returning to from Babylon after the initial captivity, not the initial, the secondary captivity where Jerusalem fell and Judah fell and they were carried away. As you already know. So the book of Ezra begins. We have two sets of people that we're going to find out about later. So we have two groups of people. I'm just going to talk about the history as a whole, and then I'll go into the specifics of the books that I wanted to highlight. So basically what we have is we have the first group, which is under the leadership of Zerubbabel. He comes back according to the declaration that was made by King Cyrus back to Babylon, where they're supposed to come back and rebuild the temple. So they do that. Then we have chapter 5 of the book of Ezra. That's it's a little bit out of place, but that's okay. If you know where it goes, it's okay. So they stop the work on the temple. Then the King Darius says, hey, it's okay. But at the same time, the prophet Haggai and then Zachariah come back around and they say, hey, you guys got to get it together, right? So we talked about Haggai last week. And we talked about the prioritizing the house of God, and Zechariah encouraging them to come back and complete the rebuilding of the temple. And so that's what they did. And then we see the second group, which is chapter 5 and chapter 6, where Ezra comes back. Let me make sure I'm right. Yep. Ezra comes back. So chapter 6 highlights when, let me just make sure, because there's a lot of history that I was navigating through, and I got totally tied up in this proper timeline. So then Ezra ends up coming back. We're not going to take a deep dive into what Ezra did this week because that is for next week's reading. But just know it was a second group of people 60 years later. That's right, it's chapter 7, so we're going to talk about that next week. 60 years later. So Haggai, Zechariah were before that. 60 years later, Ezra returns with a second group of people. So we have in the midst of their initial return under Zerubbabel a pause and then a turn to the book of Esther, where we see that during that time is when the book of Esther actually took place in the land of Persia. And so just real briefly, I'm not going to take a deep dive into Esther at all. But that's where we get the scripture for such a time as this, where everything is for such a time as this. But it's a great book, and it's really a beautiful story in the midst of a lot of words that are focused on the men. It's a story of a woman who was able to use her beauty and skills to gain the favor of her husband and king of, I don't know if it was considered husband. I don't know if they got married. I don't know that they got married. I know she was made queen. But she was able to use her beauty and her set of skills to gain the favor of the king and ultimately protect the entirety of the Jews that were dispersed throughout Persia and all of those lands. She was super brave, and God gave her favor throughout that, and he also gave her strategy, which was really awesome. So we have Esther, then we come back. I don't know why I'm squinting. I got my glasses right in my hand. So we have Esther, and then we come back, and then so one of the cool things I wanted to point out about Zachariah before we end that was that it kind of closes, chapter 14 kind of closes with a discussion of some messianic prophecies. And chapter 14 verse 8 says, "And in that day shall be that living waters shall flow from Jerusalem, half of them toward the eastern sea and half of them toward the western sea." So covering all the space. "And in both summer and winter it shall occur," meaning like all of time. It's not going to stop. It won't cease. "And then the Lord shall be king over all the earth. In that day it shall be, the Lord is one, and his name is one." Now remember, back in the book of Deuteronomy, we read in chapter 6, we read about the Shema, where it says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord God is one." And this was a thing that they speak and profess, and it's a pointing kind of back to that, reestablishing their identity in the Lord, their identity as a people. It's really beautiful reference to that, right? And it's like, and Zechariah is like prophesying to kind of a beaten down, worn out group of people, to stir them back up. And so reminding them of their identity through the declaration of the Shema and including that in this messianic prophecy is a really beautiful and strategic way to build up the hearts of people again. And then we have, I'm going to turn to, so next week we're going to finish up the book of Ezra. And so we're going to finish up the book of Ezra, and then I'll get into all that, what happens next. Then we have, I believe we go into Nehemiah, and we'll talk about that. But it's crazy what happens, again, in the book of Ezra. It's just mind-blowing. Anyway, so then we're going to turn to the New Testament, and we are making great time. It was funny because usually, like, you know, before we go live, I sit and I pray, and I formulate my notes a little bit more and whatever. And today I just felt like I had all the time in the world. So, First Peter, Peter the apostle, the original disciple, the OG, the one, right? He was in Rome when he was writing this, and he was in prison when he wrote both First and Second Peter. And he was writing this to like Gentile believers in the age that, so I got this information from the Bible Project video on First Peter and Second Peter. As always, I think those videos are awesome and really help to fill in stuff that you wouldn't always get from just reading the text. And also when you get into the words, you know, and really just trying to understand the words that you're reading and the scripture that you're reading, sometimes always understanding the context that it's actually taking place in, and there's like a macro explanation of what's actually happening at the time, really helps us grasp the point of view of the author. And when we have that, then we can then take it a step deeper and apply it to present day, right? And to our lives. Super important that we do, and we are constantly walking that out. So First Peter, he is the one, and he watched the video for the way that he pronounces Peter's names. I'll just say that because I keep wanting to try to pronounce it, and I'm not going to because it was hard. I can't remember. I should have written a phonetic spelling, but anyway. I love these books. He is not trying to like sugarcoat anything. He wants to be very clear and very specific. And he wants people to understand the greatness that they were taken into the the family of God. That people that are reading this, they were chosen, they are special. They're dealing with suffering, yes, but the suffering actually brings them closer to God. Amen. Let me read chapter 1. In this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while, if need be, you have been grieved by various trials, that the genuineness of your faith, being much more precious than gold that perishes, though it is tested by fire, may we be found to praise, honor, and glory at the revelation of Jesus Christ. So what is that? So what that's saying is, the faith that we have is the most important thing that we have. Without belief in Jesus and the understanding of who he is, we don't have anything. And then on top of that, there's this extra thing that when we have faith and we go through trials and persecution and difficulty, that trial and difficulty and persecution, it strengthens our faith. It refines our faith. Think about every single time we go through something hard, and when we do it well, when we handle it right, is because we are leaning on the Lord, we are going to him, we are receiving wisdom from him, we are waiting on him, whatever, we're either taking ground, standing our ground, resting, whatever the stance of the battle is, we're doing that thing, and that thing is reinforcing our faith in the Lord and our strength. It's giving us greater knowledge, it's giving us greater wisdom, it's giving us greater strength to withstand, and it's also increasing our faith. And so we have to value these things. Think about the things that come easy to us that matter very little to us, and how easy it is. I think it's funny because like next week we get to read Psalm 139, and so this morning I was kind of trying to get ahead a little bit, and I was reading Psalm 139, which is just, it's so awesome. It's so good to, there's just so much. David's understanding of like who God, how God sees us, and like his relationship toward us, it's just so wonderful. God really loves us, and he really thinks about us. So anyway, let me think about where I was going. Now I just lost my train of thought. Anyway, so the things that God puts in us, right? We disregard, there it was. We disregard the things that come really easy to us. We disregard, like I'm a natural organizer, and I will walk into a space and make it make sense. I have to. And I can disregard that thing. I cannot treat that skill as precious because it's a natural thing that comes to me. You know, there's people, you know, who have especially those things that you don't necessarily think of like as a gift. Like it's one thing if like you're amazing at playing the piano, or you're amazing at singing, or you're amazing, because those are gifts that people are naturally easily kind of attracted to and recognize. But those gifts that are like, oh, you make people feel like $1 million, you know, those gifts that are kind of like, they don't always get recognized as a gift, even though it is. You know, the hospitality, the works, those giftings that are kind of behind the scenes. Like, I'm just here to do the things that need to be done, right? We don't always acknowledge those as giftings, and it's the same thing when we think about our faith. Like, if we didn't have to work at our faith. Let me finish this thought. If we don't have to work at our faith, we don't like acknowledge the thing that we're working on, we don't acknowledge it as important, then it's going to be insignificant to us. If we don't recognize now that I'm saying it, it kind of doesn't make sense, but the things that we have to work on have more value. That's where I'm trying to go. The things that we have to work on, they have more value to us than things that we don't have to work on. Think about if faith just came easy, we were all made robots, and we all automatically believed in Jesus Christ when we were born. What if we could see him all the time? You know, like what if his presence came in the room and you could see it? And sometimes that happens, but for the most part, it doesn't, right? Because that's a super special manifestation of the presence of God. So we live this way having faith because not having, blessed are those, remember when Thomas was talking about like Jesus and I'll believe it. And he was basically saying, I'll believe that Jesus is resurrected when I see it. And Jesus came back and said to him, like, blessed are those, and it's a paraphrase, but basically he said, blessed are those that don't have to see. Like, you're good, but those that don't have to see, you've got an even greater blessing because you have to have greater faith because you haven't seen it with your own eyes. So your heart has to be real big. Your heart has to be really connected. Your heart has to be really dialed in. And so Peter talks a lot about having diligence in this book, right? So diligence, and it's cool. He uses this word so many different ways, but sometimes it's hard to piece it together because he uses different verb tenses and then it separates the different verb tenses. But the root word of diligence, he uses it over and over again throughout this book. So in chapter 5, nope, it's both, but it's particularly Second Peter. So anyway, before we move on, I want to talk about chapter 5. Likewise, okay, so this is super important. First, it talks about elders and what the importance of elders in leading people have to do. Number one, because if your leadership ain't straight, then you're not straight and you're not going to lead people well. How do you lead people well? You don't lord stuff over them and force them to do stuff. You lead by example. You lead by demonstration. Now, the next step, and this is important because if we don't have it right, we can't just expect people to follow us. And if we don't have it right and people do follow us, we can expect them to be imparted our junk that we're not doing well. Not saying that we have to be perfect. We can't be. We're not capable of that. But the heart of the matter is that you lead well with your heart to be an example for others. Okay? Not hypocritical. Your life has to, if you're going to preach about something or speak about something, you have to be doing the same thing. I don't do double standards. I never expect people to do something that I'm not willing to do or haven't done myself. Always. I pick up trash. I come early. I stay late. And I'm not saying that because I'm awesome. I'm saying that because that's what the Lord has called me to do. And it doesn't matter what position I'm in. I remember somebody was giving me a hard time a couple of years ago because like we had just been installed as senior pastors like the night before, and New Year's Day, it was that crazy time where we had New Year's Day and Christmas Day, and we had church on New Year's Day and Christmas Day that year. So that time, we came in the next day and we didn't have the proper cleaning situation taken care of. So when we walked in, the church was a mess. So I got a mop, and it was like my first day as senior pastor, so people are like giving me a hard time about it. But I'm like, well, we got a dirty floor, and people are trying to come in here in an hour, and we got to clean this floor. So I'm getting a mop, and you guys can help. We got to do it together. But I lead by example. I don't just bark orders from the corner or, from my high horse. And we have to hold ourselves to that standard. And I'm not saying that that's the best use of my time all the time, but I ain't afraid of work if it calls for it. We lead by example. More is caught than taught. More is caught than taught, right? But then also there's this thing that I notice over and over again, and that is that younger folks don't, it's a thing. With an age group, they don't necessarily want to be told what to do, or maybe they don't realize that they don't know something. And so we as older folks who maybe have been there before, we won't say anything. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. And maybe this is unpopular, but someone who I love, I adore, wasn't asking for any of my opinions. And I felt the Lord put on my heart as I was praying for them at a later date to go talk to them about something. They weren't asking about it, but I saw something that I wanted to bring to their attention. Now, people can take offense to this, and especially now where now in this, I don't know what it is. I don't know why, but I remember I told somebody, I was actually telling this person, I had an old, I'll just say it. I'm sorry to my husband, who I love. And we celebrated 13 years of marriage yesterday. 13. But I had an old boyfriend who was like a total jerk, and I didn't realize it. But like everybody around me realized the guy's a jerk, and nobody said anything to me. And maybe I wouldn't have been in that relationship if I just didn't, if I would have seen a little earlier. Like, yeah, maybe if somebody said like, hey, that guy's a jerk, watch out. Maybe I wouldn't have been like, okay, I'll break up with him right now. No, but when you get a warning from somebody and then you see the evidence of this thing that you got a warning from, that's reinforcement. Hey, okay, now my eyes need to be open to this thing. So what we do is we do this thing as young folks that we think we know everything, and we don't. We don't know many things. Me, at my age today, having been in leadership in this church or wherever for however long I've been here, I still don't know anything. And I still make a lot of mistakes, probably more than I should. I don't know. I'm just trying. I'm just trying to listen to the Lord. But I say this to say that we have to be submitted to leadership so that we can grow. So chapter 5, verse 5 says, likewise, you younger people, submit yourself to your elders. Yes, all of you be submissive to one another and be clothed with humility, for God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time, casting all your care on him, for he cares for you. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. And the next line says, resist him. So this is, you give access to the devil. You give yourself to the devil, or you open yourself up to the enemy when you don't have humility, when you think you know it all and you're not submitted to anybody. Okay? When there's not somebody that can come in and say, "Hey, you got to fix this," and you don't get defensive. People have to understand that we're not always perfect at all times. Nobody is. And there are times when we have to receive correction. And the more you receive correction, the more you receive feedback even. So feedback, they go together. Feedback, I mean, you can take it as correction, but like the more you receive opinions, like, hey, I know for me in kids ministry, it's new for me, so I'm still learning a lot. Really, in anything that I do, I'm always trying to ask for feedback. I always want to know. I preach a message, I want to know how to go. Was there anything that could be fixed? Was there any part of my delivery? Did I use too many scriptures? Did I use too few scriptures? Hey, I wrote a message for kids. Yeah, they're kids. Yes, they're kids, but I care that the kids can receive the message. So I want to know, do I need to change something? Is it too high? Is it too easy for them to? What needs to change? We have to be open to knowing that we don't have it always all together. We can't get offended by correction. We can't get offended. You should be grateful for that. I remember hearing somebody talk about how her mother-in-law always corrected her. And I was like, that's awesome. I would love to have so much correction. Like, I would love to have people that would give me feedback, when I need it. I would love that. I have to go seek it out a lot and ask for it. But I do. And we should be open to receiving feedback. But also that requires submission and humility to receive it. Right? We cannot think that we're better than we are. And it says, you younger people. And I think there's something significant in that. There's going to be a very short span of your life that you are older than everybody else in your life. And until then, You got to be looking around for who you can get help from, right? You have to be submitted to someone. You're always a younger person. You're always going to be a younger person. So we always, all of us, we always have to remain humble. We always have to remain ready to receive correction and feedback. We always have to remain ready to be submitted to your leadership. This is not everybody. I'm not saying everybody that's older than you, but I'm saying there needs to be people that are older than you in the Lord that speak into your life always, that you're submitted to and that you're ready to receive correction from, or direction, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so when you don't do that, you open yourself up to the enemy. Open yourself up to the enemy. Pride comes in. You think you know it all. You don't want to receive correction. You cop it attitude. You get a rebellious spirit in you, and you're out of there, or you're on to the next thing, or you're rejecting whatever the Lord is trying to tell you through people around you. Like you're creating destruction for your life. You're opening yourself up. The enemy is looking for you when you're in a position of rebellion or in a position of pride, because he can take you from when you're not humble and before the Lord. He can take you and he can end you. He can end your purpose. He can end the path that you're on toward the Lord and the things of God when you open yourself up. Don't do it. 2 Peter. Yeah, man, it's no good. No good. As a little side note, I had a kind of a situation last week. Like, I was really tired on Monday, and I went into work, because I always do, and I told my husband, I'm like, babe, you got to help me remember, after I preach, I should work from home, because we live so far away, and I always have things like pulsing through my brain about, what to do after Sundays. So I always want to work on Mondays. I don't want to just take a day off and whatever. So I told my husband, I'm like, babe, when I'm too tired, I shouldn't go into the office, because I start looking around and I see all these things. So anyway, see all the things that need to get done, and I feel overwhelmed because I'm tired. And when we're tired, we're just we're not as able to process things in the way that the Lord would have us process them, right? The most important thing, those kind of timing, all that stuff matters. So last week and it's funny too, because it was the week after Thanksgiving. Wait, when was Thanksgiving? Was it last Thursday? So
this past Thursday.
When did I preach? The week before.
Sunday. This past Sunday was
23rd.
Yes.
I preached on the 23rd. So it was a week before Thanksgiving, which is kind of ironic. So I was really tired. I went into work. And so that kind of started this whole spiral where I got real frustrated with my husband, because we've been going through a renovation. And I started thinking about all the things that I wanted to get done here. And then when I got home, I was just frustrated. It was like 2 nights in a row of just rushing and busyness, of the kids and all the things. And so I started looking at the things that my husband wasn't doing instead of all of the things that he was doing. And so I kind of started building up my argument with him, and that was all the things that I was doing and all the things that I had responsibility for, and he wasn't doing what I wanted him to do. And in that, I had a couple of tough days of just being ungrateful, not thankful at all, because my mind was set on the wrong thing. My mind wasn't set on what the Lord, all the good things that could come out of Sunday, or all the good things that were coming that weekend with Thanksgiving and all that stuff. I was being fully ungrateful. I was being super selfish and looking at myself. And the enemy came in and I started allowing myself to focus on the things that my husband hadn't gotten done yet, because I wanted them done first, but he was doing whatever he was doing. We lived not two separate lives, but in two people, you can see things two totally different ways. And it's very important to my husband to have things in order, in our home. And I just was not being thankful to him for taking the kids for longer hours, for being the one to pick them up and drive them home, for being the one, to put them to bed if I had to stay late or do a late thing or whatever. He was picking up so much slack, and I was not looking at that. I was looking at the things that I was being prideful of, all the things that were on my plate, and not considering all the things that were still on his plate, as if he was like laying around eating, chips while, I was doing all the work. It wasn't true. But this is what I'm trying to say is like my heart wasn't before the Lord. I can see the reasons why. I can see what happened. And so I allowed myself to go down a negative course of thoughts. And then that allowed the enemy to kind of step in and like get a foot in the door with my mind. And I had a rough couple of days where my husband and I got in an argument, had a discussion, whatever you want to call it. And it was my fault. And I had to come back and be like, man, like the next day I came back and I'm like, man, I'm just really sorry. I don't know what to say. Like, it was funny too, because I knew that I was wrong. I didn't feel wrong. Like, I didn't feel sorry. You know how like when you mess up and you're like, I really messed up. I didn't feel that. But I knew that I was wrong. And so I had to go to him and be like, listen, I know I'm wrong and I am sorry. And I couldn't have much more of a conversation then, because like it was only head knowledge at that point and whatever. But it was when I got prideful, the enemy got a foot in the door, and I let him have my thoughts. And it was stupid. Don't let the enemy get a hold of you and your thoughts. So real quickly, I want to step into 2 Peter, and then we'll close out for today. This is where he talks a lot about being diligent. So, and being diligent means to earnestly interest oneself in. It means to exert oneself towards, to endeavor, to give deference, to really go after, to it's like seek after it, but with action, with heart, with passion. Like go after it. Like invest yourself in it. Be diligent. So every time you're seeing that word in this book, in this chapter, in this book, I was right the first time. Every time you're seeing that, think that. Go after it with passion, with hunger. Like not just like, oh yeah, be diligent. No, it's be diligent. Peter writes this when he knows he's going to die soon. This is the last thing that he writes. And he's letting people know, like, this is basically like his last opportunity. And so what does he do? He takes some time. This is another great book or a great video to watch. He takes some time to refute some arguments that have been going around with some false teachers. And he's warning the church about these false teachers who are claiming three things. One, that Jesus wasn't raised from the dead, basically, in so many words. So they're refuting his deity. He's responding to these false teachers that say that Jesus wasn't really Jesus, the Christ. He was refuting that the idea that what's happening with these teachers is that, so you know how there's this teaching that Paul has where, he could do everything, but he chooses not to do everything because it's not good. Like, that whole idea about everything in moderation, but it's not, some things just aren't good. We have freedom and liberty in Christ, but these teachers were coming around saying because they have freedom and liberty, they can do whatever. They can commit adultery. They can submit to the lusts that they have of the flesh, the pride of life, the lust of the eyes, those things that they desire. It's okay if they go after them because they have Jesus, right? And that's a heresy. It's a false opinion. I wrote this down. It's a false. Let me just read it from my Bible. So it actually comes from the words to choose. heresy. The word heresy comes from the word to choose. And it's basically like it's not treating the word of God as truth. It's like making up your opinion or, doing some, rationalization of the word or taking something that wasn't meant to be line by line, like cutting, if your eye causes you to sin, cut it out. That's not what Jesus meant, right? So like a heresy would be cut out your eye, like literally do it. That's not what Jesus meant. A heresy is your opinion about something that's not backed by truth. Okay, so these false teachers in First and Second Peter were coming. They were making stuff up so that they could indulge their lustful desires. Right? They could have adulterous affairs. They could, make a bunch of money and keep it. That those things that satisfied their flesh, but it wasn't truth. Like they were basically saying they weren't going to stand before the Lord. They weren't going to stand and be judged before him. And so Peter wanted to come back and be like, yes, you will. And you need to act now in building up who you are. Building up your character, building up the nature that God gave you to make you more like Jesus. And the last thing was that God was being slack. I love that word. I love that it says slack in the Bible. And I'll get to that in a minute, but God's being slow to come back. So I want to talk about this chapter 1, verse 5, because this is one of my favorite. If you think you're doing real well with the Lord, come in and do a deep dive in 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 5 and 6, okay? So this is the one where it says, Peter knows, okay, so this is the one where he says, add faith to virtue, to virtue, add understanding, to understanding, add right. Let me just read the verse and then I'll break it down for you. Okay. Giving all diligence, there's that word, add to your faith, virtue. Okay. So real quick before we go on, I want to read this. It says, so when it says add, the word another way to say this word is minister. So it's really interesting, meaning in another explanation of this word is like spare no cost to make this thing happen. Like go at it. Add to your faith virtue, to virtue knowledge, to knowledge self-control. I love that. To self-control perseverance, to perseverance godliness, to godliness brotherly kindness, and to brotherly kindness love. Notice the bookends, faith and love, which is really cool. So faith, virtuous course. To faith you want to add virtue, which is virtuous course of thought, intrinsic value, moral excellence, and goodness. But virtuous course of thought, feeling, or action. So moral excellence, like holding it way up here, your standard. The way that you think and the way that you allow yourself to think. The way that you handle situations. The way that you feel, it says, about situations. Like even managing that, right? Well, that's just how I feel. No, make your feelings align with truth, okay? I'm sorry. I feel like sometimes I feel like an angry mom when I teach. I feel so passionate about it because I've lived it. And when you give yourself this like, oh, it's okay if you're feeling. No, your feelings will get you off track. Just what I told you about last week. My feelings, because I was tired and I got angry and I let my feelings determine how I acted. And that caused me to sin because I treated my husband below the standard that I should. This stuff is important, and there's a reason why it's in this book. Don't let yourself go there. This is why I get so passionate about it. Okay, so to your feelings. Okay, got it. Virtue. Add understanding related to right living. So how you conduct yourself, being righteous, understanding. That's the word there is gnosis. It is it's a comprehension. Add to understanding self-control. Let me read this to you. It's one who masters their desires and passions, especially appetites. And I struggle with this because one of the ways that I master my appetite is and I mean for food, it's like I don't buy the things, right? And I like wonder, is that good enough? Like, should I be able to have the things in my house and still like not eat them? But I guess like don't open yourself up to temptation, right? Like why make it easy for yourself to sin? It's not really sin. It could be. If you're not self-controlled, right? And you're just controlled by something. So in this case, and it's really important that we recognize like, is this thing controlling you? A lot of us, it's funny, in staff we were talking about fasting today, and one of us we're talking about like relationship to food, and that really has to do with our self-control and our view. So it's self-control is one who has mastered the flesh. Like, okay, it's the same thing. Like, I guess my way is not necessarily a bad way. I don't want to be tempted with it, so I'm not going to allow it in my life. It's the same thing like you're not going to look at nudity, or you're not going to, you can go, like guys can go to the beach these days and see butts everywhere. I'm sorry, you guys. You don't want to see that. If that's something that you struggle with, why would you look at that? Like, just turn off the television, or don't go to the beach, or, whatever it is that you have to restrict yourself so you can manage that appetite, right? I mean, it's just a reality of our lives is we've got to learn to have self-control, and we have to set ourselves up for success. That doesn't mean that we can't go anywhere or smell food or look at things, but like, it means that we have to control our response to it. I think about this all the time because I don't want any one thing to control myself and to control me, to determine how many pieces of that chocolate am I going to have? Like, how much of that am I actually going to let myself eat? Like, when I go popcorn, I love popcorn. I'm so thankful for lesser evil popcorn because it's basically got nothing terrible in it. And it's like how I get my Christmas feels. And so like last night I was eating it, and I can't sit there with the bag. I just can't. I have to limit myself. If I sit there with a bag, it's like I don't think about it. So I get my cups, and I limit myself. How do we add to our self-control, right? How do we expand our self-control? How do we control our fleshly appetites and desires? Because this is important, and it even has to do with food. It even has to do with things that we look at. It has to do with all of our fleshly desires. I'm sorry, I'm going to close up here. I'm sorry. Steadfastness. Add to self-control. Steadfastness. I love this. Constancy and endurance. There are no days off with Jesus. Just because it's Christmas time does not mean that you get to sleep in. Just because you're busy does not mean that you get to hurry up and skip your devotions. This is so important. Endurance. Every single day with Him, without fail. And if even better, throughout the day. Lord, what are you doing right now? How are you moving right now? God, how can I connect with you right now? Pray in the Spirit, whatever it is. Add to self-control, steadfastness, patience. I think it said perseverance here. One of my favorite words. I got the Perseverant Award when I was in high school. I'm proud of it. And then last but not least, the two last things. So to godliness, which is just referencing reverence and respect toward the Lord, godliness being like Him. And then kindness, being kind, which is exactly what that means. But then finally love, loving others and treating others the way that God would treat them, and seeing the gold that God has put in them. Yeah, that's it. That's 2 Peter. So it's an intense book. But man, I love that kind of book because that's how I feel. Like, give it to me straight. Tell me the truth. I don't want to believe any lies. So just tell me what's up. So anyway, 50, 51, 52. Yeah. Okay. This was 49. So next week is 50. Here we go, guys. We're going to be getting into like Malachi. And we already made Malachi? I don't think so. And Revelation. And that's it. That's where we're going. So next week we get to talk about the epistles of John. And we've got a lot of good stuff. So we're almost there. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below. And we will be back next week. Don't forget that God is a good God. He loves you and He wants to bless you.